Lily stood in front of the polished glass doors of the police station, gripping an envelope in her small hands. It was the only thing that connected her to the world she'd lost. She took a deep breath, feeling the cool air brushing against her face, though it didn't soothe the knot in her stomach. She was only 10, but she had a mission. One she didn't fully understand, but one she knew she had to complete. Her father, Officer Daniel Collins, had been everything to her: her protector, her role model, her hero. He was the officer who wore his uniform with pride, the one who'd come home every evening with stories about his partner, Max. Max wasn't just any dog. He was her father's canine partner, loyal and fierce, trained to detect danger and keep the streets safe. Daniel and Max were a team, inseparable in a way that seemed to transcend the ordinary relationship between a cop and his dog. They had been through everything together: sleepless nights, dangerous chases, and moments of joy. When her father died unexpectedly in the line of duty, it felt as though the world stopped turning. Her mother, Sarah, had tried to comfort her, but Lily was consumed by an overwhelming sense of loss. The house felt too quiet, and the bed she shared with her mother felt too big without her father's warm presence beside her. But there was one thing that still brought her some sense of connection to the world she once knew: Max. The retired police dog had been placed in the care of Officer Grant, another member of the force. Max had stopped responding to commands and barely left the house, grieving his lost partner just as Lily had. They both understood what it was like to miss someone so deeply. The idea of being with Max, of sharing memories of her father, was the one thing that brought her a sliver of peace in a world that felt endlessly dark. That was why Lily was here, standing in front of the station, heart pounding in her chest. She had a simple request, but she didn't know how it would be received. She wanted to bring Max home. She wanted to be with him, to take care of him, and perhaps, just perhaps, to heal the wounds they both shared. With a determined nod to herself, she pushed open the door. The bell above it jingled as she stepped into the station, and the receptionist at the desk looked up, raising an eyebrow at the sight of the young girl. Lily swallowed hard, walking up to the counter. Her voice barely above a whisper, she asked to speak to the chief. "I need to talk to Chief Roberts," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The receptionist paused, clearly taken aback, but nodded. "Do you have an appointment?" Lily shook her head. "No, but it's important. I need to talk to him about Max." Chief Roberts was sitting at his desk, reviewing a report when the door to his office opened, and Lily stepped in. The sudden presence of such a young visitor caught him off guard, and he raised an eyebrow in mild surprise. She was small, her clothes slightly too big for her frame, but there was a quiet determination in her eyes that made the chief pause. "You must be Lily," Chief Roberts said gently, standing up from his desk. He had seen her around the station before, but only in passing. He knew she had been the daughter of Officer Daniel Collins, the officer who had tragically lost his life months earlier. Lily nodded, her hands clutching the envelope tightly, her knuckles white from the pressure. She had been rehearsing what she would say to the chief on the way over, but now that she was here, her words seemed to get tangled up in her throat. She took a deep breath before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm here to ask about Max, my father's dog." Her voice wavered slightly, but she steadied herself. "I want to buy him. I want to take him home." The chief blinked, processing her words slowly. It wasn't a request he had ever expected to hear, and certainly not from a child so young. Max had been retired after Daniel's death and had been living with Officer Grant, who had become his new handler. The bond between Daniel and Max had been irreplaceable. He couldn't imagine anyone else, let alone a little girl, asking to take him in. "Lily," Chief Roberts began, choosing his words carefully, "I understand why you want to be with Max. He was your father's partner, and I know you miss him. But Max isn't just a dog. He's a police dog. He's been trained for specific tasks, and it's not something we can simply transfer to someone else." Lily's eyes widened, but she stood her ground. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she couldn't give up. "But Max is the only part of my dad that's still here. He's the only one who understands what I'm going through. I can take care of him. Please, Chief Roberts." I want to help him heal, just like I need to heal." The chief sighed, running a hand over his tired face. He had seen the grief in Lily's eyes when she had lost her father, and he knew the pain she carried every day. But the idea of parting with Max, his loyal K9, the dog who had served the force alongside Daniel, was a hard decision to make. Max wasn't just any dog. He had been more than a companion. He had been a partner in the truest sense of the word. "I know this is hard," the chief said slowly, "but we can't just give Max away. He has a new handler now, and he's been adjusting to life after your dad's death. I don't know if it's even possible for him to bond with anyone else." Lily's heart sank, but she didn't let the tears fall. "Please," she repeated, her voice pleading. "I just need him. I don't want to lose him too." The chief felt a pang in his chest as he watched the determination in Lily's eyes. He knew it wasn't a simple request, but there was something in her words that struck him deeply. After a long pause, he finally nodded, a decision forming in his mind. "All right," he said softly. "I'll arrange for you to meet Officer Grant and Max. But I can't promise anything. It's going to be difficult, but we'll see what we can do." Lily's face lit up, relief flooding her features. "Thank you, Chief. Thank you so much." As she turned to leave the office, Chief Roberts watched her go, a weight settling in his chest. He knew this wouldn't be easy, but he had made a promise. And sometimes, promises were more important than rules. Officer Grant had been expecting the meeting, though he didn't know exactly what to expect from a young girl like Lily. He had been with the force for years, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of Lily walking into the station, her eyes filled with determination. She was just a child, but the sadness in her face spoke volumes. She had been through more than most people twice her age. When Lily entered the room, Officer Grant stood up from his desk, his expression softening. "Lily, it's good to see you," he said, his voice gentle as he gestured for her to sit down. He had known her father, Daniel, for a long time. The bond between him and Max had been something special, something that couldn't be replicated. The two had been through thick and thin together, facing danger and adversity at every turn. But now, without Daniel, Max was a shadow of the dog he used to be. Max was lying in the corner of the office, his head resting on his paws, eyes dull and distant. Officer Grant could see the dog's grief, the way his body seemed to sag as if the weight of his own sorrow had become too much to bear. It wasn't the same Max who had once been so full of life, charging into every situation with energy and loyalty. Grant watched Lily as she carefully approached Max, her steps hesitant at first. She knelt down in front of him, her eyes locking with his. For a moment, there was silence, just the soft rustling of the station's lights and the quiet hum of the building around them. Then, as if recognizing her, Max slowly raised his head. His eyes, once dull, began to show a glimmer of recognition, as if remembering the little girl who had spent countless hours playing with him as a child. "Max," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. She reached out and gently stroked his fur. "It's me, Lily. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Max's tail twitched, and for the first time in months, a small whine began. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make Officer Grant's heart ache. He had never seen Max respond like this to anyone else since Daniel's death. It was as though the dog understood what Lily was offering, a lifeline, a connection to the past. Grant watched quietly, not wanting to interrupt the moment, but he couldn't help but wonder. Could Max truly bond with her again? Could the dog who had lost so much find comfort in the daughter of the man he had loved so dearly? "I've been trying to get Max to open up to me," Grant said quietly, his voice laced with sadness. "But it's been hard. He misses Daniel more than anyone can understand. The bond they had, it's not something that can be replaced. I didn't think he could ever trust anyone the way he trusted your dad." Lily's eyes never left Max as she gently pet him. "I know he misses Dad," she said softly. "I miss him too. But Max, he's all I have left of him. And I need him, Officer Grant, just like he needs me." Grant stood there for a moment, reflecting on Lily's words. He had always thought of Max as a police dog first, loyal, strong, and driven. But he realized that Max was more than that. He was a living reminder of Daniel, and perhaps He needed more than just a handler. Maybe what he needed most was the love of someone who truly understood the loss. Someone like Lily. "You know," Grant said after a pause, his voice thick with emotion, "I think your dad would have wanted this. He always said Max was like family. If anyone can help him heal, it's you." Lily nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "I'll take care of him," she promised. "I'll make sure he's never alone again." As Lily and Max shared that quiet moment, Officer Grant stepped back, letting the two of them bond. He realized that perhaps this was the beginning of a new chapter for both of them. Max wasn't just a dog, he was family. And family didn't always come in expected forms. Lily sat on the floor of the police station, her small hands running through Max's fur as the dog slowly, almost hesitantly, leaned into her touch. There was a quiet understanding in the room, a silent acknowledgement that something important was happening. Max had been through so much, and so had Lily. Both of them had experienced the kind of loss that left a permanent mark, but in this moment, there was a spark of hope, of healing. As Max allowed her to pet him, Lily felt the familiar warmth that she remembered from her childhood. She had spent so many hours with Max when she was younger, playing in the yard, teaching him tricks, laughing as he ran alongside her on their walks. It was all memories now, but standing here with him again, it felt as if time had folded back on itself. The dog that had once been her father's companion was now here, with her, offering a kind of comfort she didn't realize she'd been craving. "Max," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "I know you miss Dad. I miss him too, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. I promise." Max's tail, which had been still for so long, gave a small, tentative wag. It wasn't much, but to Lily, it felt like the world. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. The smell of his fur, the familiar rhythm of his breathing. It was like she could feel a piece of her father in that moment. It was the connection she had been longing for. Max wasn't just a dog. He was a bridge to the father she had lost. Officer Grant, standing quietly in the background, watched the scene unfold. He had always known that Max was more than just a working dog. He had seen the way the dog responded to Daniel, the way the two had shared an unspoken bond of loyalty and trust. But he had never seen Max react like this, like he was letting go of the grief that had been holding him back. It was as though Max had recognized that Lily wasn't just a little girl. She was the last piece of Daniel he had left. Grant's heart ached as he remembered the days after Daniel's death. Max had become a shell of the dog he had once been. He had stopped responding to commands, stopped interacting with anyone. The spark that had once made him an incredible working dog seemed to have faded. Grant had tried to connect with him, but the dog had always been distant, as if he were waiting for something, waiting for Daniel to come back. Now, as he watched Max lean into Lily's embrace, he realized something he hadn't fully understood before. Max hadn't just been mourning his partner. He had been waiting for the person who could help him heal, the person who could fill the empty space left by Daniel's absence. And that person was Lily. The room was silent, save for the soft sound of Max's breathing and the occasional sniffle from Lily. The chief, who had quietly entered the room, stood at the doorway, watching the reunion with a mixture of sadness and hope. He had been unsure about this decision, unsure if it was the right thing to do. But seeing the bond between the girl and the dog, he realized that sometimes healing came from the most unexpected places. Lily looked up at Officer Grant, her eyes red from the tears she had tried to hold back. "Thank you," she said softly. "I didn't think you would remember me." Grant gave her a small smile, his voice thick with emotion. "He remembers Lily. He remembers you and your dad. And I think, in his own way, he's ready to come home with you." Lily nodded, a mix of sadness and relief washing over her. She knew this wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't just about taking care of Max. It was about carrying forward her father's legacy. But in that moment, as Max laid his head on her lap, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She wasn't alone anymore. Neither of them were. Later that afternoon, Lily and Officer Grant sat in a quiet corner of the police station, the room filled with the soft hum of distant conversations. Max was lying peacefully at her feet, his head resting on her lap, his eyes half closed in contentment. Lily gently stroked his fur, a silent promise in her heart to never let go, to never let him feel alone again. Officer Grant, who had been watching the quiet exchange between the two, pulled a small envelope from his jacket pocket. It was worn at the edges, creased from time and handling, but the name on the front was unmistakable. Lily's father, Daniel Collins. The letter had been kept safe by Officer Grant ever since Daniel's passing, a final message for Lily that had never been delivered. Until now. Lily looked up as Officer Grant handed her the envelope. Her small fingers trembled as she took it, not fully understanding what was inside. She had always wondered if her father had left something for her. A letter, a note, something that would help her understand the man she had lost so suddenly. The envelope was sealed, the ink faded but still legible. "Open it," Officer Grant said softly, his voice filled with a mixture of sadness and reverence. "It's from your dad. He wrote it before, well, before everything changed." Lily nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat, and carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a folded piece of paper, the edges worn but the words still clear. She took a deep breath and began to read. "Lily, if you're reading this, then I'm not there to say it myself. I wish more than anything that I could be here with you. You've been my greatest joy, my pride, my heart. I hope you always know how much I love you, no matter where I am or what happens." The words blurred before her eyes as tears welled up. She wiped her eyes quickly, not wanting to stop reading. "Max is more than just a dog to me. He's been my partner, my protector, and my best friend. But I want you to know something, Lily. If anything ever happens to me, I want Max to be there for you, just as I would be. He's not just a dog, he's family. He's loyal, and he'll watch over you, just like I've tried to. He needs you, and you need him." Lily paused, her heart racing as she tried to take in the words. Her father had known. He had known she would need Max, that the dog would be the one thing that could help her through the dark times ahead. She felt her chest tighten with emotion, a mixture of grief and love swelling inside her. "Promise me you'll take care of him. He's strong, but he's hurting, just like you. And together, you'll both heal. I'm trusting you with him, Lily. Keep him close. Don't let him forget how much he means to you. And remember, no matter what, I'm always with you, in your heart and in his." Lily couldn't hold back the tears anymore. The letter was a gift, a final bond between her and her father, a connection that had somehow managed to survive even death. As the tears fell, she hugged the letter tightly to her chest, feeling Max nuzzle closer to her, his body warm against her side. "I'll take care of him, Dad," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I promise. I won't let you down." Officer Grant, who had been watching silently, cleared his throat, his own eyes glistening with emotion. "Your dad knew what he was doing when he wrote that letter. He knew you and Max would need each other. And now you've got him. Together, you'll make it through this." Lily nodded, wiping her tears away as she looked down at Max. The dog was no longer distant, no longer mourning. He was here with her, and in that moment, she knew that they would heal together. Her father's love would always be with them, just as he had promised. The days that followed were a blend of emotions for Lily. Every morning, she woke up to find Max lying next to her bed, his head resting on her feet, just as he had once done when her father was still alive. There was something deeply comforting about his presence, and as the days went by, it became clear that their bond was growing stronger. They had both suffered great losses, but together they were learning how to cope with the grief. Officer Grant had stopped by frequently, checking in on them, and making sure both Lily and Max were adjusting well to their new life together. It wasn't always easy. Max still had moments when he would retreat into himself, his eyes distant as he remembered his former partner. Lily, too, had moments of silence, of staring at the walls of her father's room, feeling his absence like a sharp ache in her chest. But there were also moments of joy, small moments, like when Max first wagged his tail in response to Lily's laugh, or when she caught him following her around the house as if he were keeping guard. She could feel her father's presence in those moments, a reminder that even though he was no longer there, his love and lessons still guided her. One afternoon, as the sun began to set, Lily and Max were in the backyard, sitting on the porch steps. The warm light bathed the yard in a soft glow, and Lily watched as Max lay on the grass, his eyes closing as he soaked in the sun. She couldn't help but smile at how peaceful he looked. He wasn't the same dog he had been when her father was around, but in many ways he was finding his way back to the dog he once was. Lily reached over to the small garden where her father had always tended to his flowers. She picked a few of the roses that bloomed there, the ones her father had loved so much, and carefully placed them on the ground beside Max. She knew it wasn't much, but it felt like a way to honor him, a small gesture to remind Max that they weren't alone. "You're doing well, Max," Lily said softly, as if the dog could understand her words. "I know you miss Dad. I do too, but we'll get through this together, I promise." Max lifted his head and nuzzled her hand, his tail giving a slow wag. It was a simple act, but to Lily, it meant everything. It was as though Max was telling her that he understood that they were in this together, that they both had to find their own path forward, but they weren't going to face it alone. As the days turned into weeks, the house felt less empty. It still had its quiet moments, of course, but the sorrow that once filled every corner was starting to fade, replaced by the gentle presence of a dog who had once been her father's partner. Lily knew that there would always be a part of her that missed her dad, that would ache for him, but she also knew that Max would be there to help carry her through. And then there were the times when Max seemed to heal even more. He began to run again, his body moving with the grace and energy of a much younger dog. He would chase after the ball that Lily threw for him, a sparkle in his eye that reminded her of the dog he used to be, strong, happy, and full of life. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, Officer Grant stopped by to check on them once more. He leaned against the doorframe, his eyes watching as Max bounded across the yard, his tail wagging with joy. "It's amazing," Grant said with a smile. "He hasn't looked like that in a long time." Lily smiled softly, her eyes focused on Max. "I think he's finally starting to heal." "We both are." Grant nodded, his voice gentle. "Sometimes, the best way to heal is to have someone who understands your pain beside you. You've given him that, Lily, and he's given you the same in return." Lily's heart swelled with gratitude as she watched Max. She knew it wasn't just about the dog learning to live again. It was about her too. Together, they had found a way to move forward, to honor the memory of the man they both loved. And though the road ahead wouldn't be easy, Lily knew they had something special, something that would last, no matter what. As the weeks passed, the bond between Lily and Max deepened in ways she hadn't expected. Max had not only become her companion, but he was also her silent guide through the waves of grief that still occasionally crashed over her. There were times when Lily would find herself sitting alone, her mind drifting back to the days before her father's passing, feeling the emptiness in her chest. But then, without fail, Max would appear at her side, his steady presence like an anchor in the storm. One afternoon, as Lily sat in her room, the weight of sadness pressing on her chest, she was surprised when Max walked over to her, gently nudging her hand with his nose. It was as if he knew something was wrong, something she couldn't put into words. She smiled faintly, reaching down to stroke his head. "You're always there when I need you, aren't you, boy?" she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. Max sat beside her, his eyes focused on her, his steady gaze offering the comfort she hadn't realized she needed. In that moment, something inside Lily shifted. It wasn't a huge revelation, but it was a quiet understanding. She had spent so much time mourning her father's absence that she hadn't fully allowed herself to heal. She hadn't realized that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant learning to live with the love and loss, carrying it forward in new ways. Max, who had once been her father's partner in the most demanding of circumstances, was now hers. He wasn't just a dog. He was a piece of her father's legacy. Every wag of his tail, every gentle nudge, was a reminder that love transcended loss. That even though her father was gone, his spirit lived on in the bond she now shared with Max. The more time Lily spent with him, the more she realized how much she had learned from this dog who had lived a life of loyalty and service. Max had endured pain and loss too. He had seen the world from a perspective of duty and protection, always by her father's side. And now he was teaching her the same lessons of resilience, loyalty, and love. One evening, as Lily sat on the porch with Max, she thought about how far they had come together. It wasn't just about the moments of joy, though there were plenty of those, like the way Max would bound toward her with his toy in his mouth, eager to play, or how he would lie beside her at night, offering comfort as she drifted off to sleep. It was also about the quieter moments, the ones that spoke volumes. There were the days when Lily would take Max for long walks in the park, and they would walk in silence, side by side. The world around them would bustle with life, families playing, children laughing, but in those moments, all that mattered was the sound of their footsteps on the ground. The connection between them was deeper than words. It wasn't long before Lily began to feel a shift within herself. She started smiling more often, even when the sadness threatened to overwhelm her. Max's presence was a constant source of strength, and as he grew more and more at ease in her company, so did she. It was clear that they were both healing in their own way, together. One day, Officer Grant came by to visit, his expression reflecting pride as he watched Lily and Max interact. Max was now full of energy, his playful side emerging as he ran circles around her, barking excitedly when she threw the ball. The transformation was undeniable. Max had found his place again, and it was beside Lily. "You two are doing great," Grant said with a smile, watching the way Max responded to Lily's every command, his eyes filled with the same joy he had once shared with her father. Lily smiled, her heart light. "We're learning. I think we're both healing, in our own way." Grant nodded, a knowing look in his eyes. "That's what matters. Love can heal, Lily. And you and Max, you're living proof of that." As the sun set behind them, casting a golden hue over the backyard, Livy looked down at Max, who sat faithfully by her side, his eyes meeting hers. She knew they still had a long road ahead. There would be days when the grief would resurface, when the pain of losing her father would hit her like a wave. But in that moment, she realized that she wasn't alone. Max had become her reminder that love, even in its absence, never truly fades. It only transforms, finds new ways to live on, and sometimes it lives on in the most unexpected places, like in the eyes of a dog who had once been her father's partner but was now her own. Months had passed, and life for Lily and Max had taken on a new rhythm, one that was grounded in the love and memories they shared. The grief was still there, woven into the fabric of their days, but it no longer consumed them. The house no longer felt as empty, and the silence no longer weighed so heavily. They had found a way to fill the space with laughter, with joy, and with the gentle presence of a dog who had once been her father's partner, but had become her greatest source of comfort. One afternoon, as Lily sat at the kitchen table, Max lying beside her feet, she noticed the small scar on his paw, a reminder of the many battles he had fought, both on the streets and in his own heart. She gently traced the mark with her finger, her heart swelling with affection. Max was no longer just a dog. He was family, a living connection to the father she had lost. Officer Grant had been by several times in the past few weeks, watching with a mixture of pride and awe as he saw how far both Lily and Max had come. He had always known the bond between a handler and a police dog was special, but seeing the bond between Lily and Max was something entirely different. It was raw, tender, and full of an unspoken understanding that transcended words. It was during one of these visits that Officer Grant shared something with Lily, something that would change the course of her life and her future with Max. "I've been talking to the department," Grant said, his voice a bit more serious than usual. "And we've made a decision. It's clear you and Max have something incredible together. I want you to know that you don't have to worry about the future with him. He's yours, Lily, officially." Lily's eyes widened, her heart skipping a beat. "You mean I can keep him?" Grant smiled softly, nodding. "Yes, we've all seen how much you two have helped each other heal. Max has found his purpose with you, and you found yours with him. The department agrees. It's time for him to stay with you. He's not just a retired dog anymore. He's family." Tears welled in Lily's eyes as she looked down at Max, who was now wagging his tail, sensing the shift in the air. He seemed to know that his life was about to change forever. But more importantly, he knew he had found his place, by Lily's side, in the heart of the family. "Thank you," Lily whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I'll take care of him, I swear. I'll never let him go." Grant placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice thick with pride. "I know you will, Lily. You already have." With that, the bond between Lily and Max was sealed, not just by their shared experiences, but by a future that was now theirs to build together. They would continue to heal, continue to find strength in each other. And in time, they would become an inseparable team, as they had always been meant to be. That night, as the stars twinkled outside the window, Lily sat on the porch with Max curled up at her feet, her hand resting gently on his back. The past was still there, but it no longer felt like a weight. It felt like a foundation, something solid beneath their feet as they looked toward the future. There would be challenges, of course. Life wasn't without its difficulties. But now, Lily knew she wouldn't have to face them alone. Max would always be there, as loyal and steadfast as ever, just as he had been for her father, and just as he would be for her, for as long as they both had breath. In the quiet of that moment, with the soft hum of the night around them, Lily finally felt at peace. Her father's love, Max's loyalty, and the lessons they had both taught her would guide her for the rest of her life. Together, they had found their way forward. And together, they would face whatever came next, side by side, a family united by love.